Have you ever wanted to discover what's missing in your life? Metaphysics is available to all and is part of your life even if you don't know it. Welcome to Metaphysics, a view through the veil with Barb Crowley. Together we'll explore the mysteries behind metaphysics and how to use it to have a deeper understanding and advantage in life. And now here's your host, Barb Crowley.
Hi, this is Barb Crowley, and welcome to Metaphysics, a View Through the Veil. Today we're talking to CJ Llewelyn. She actually has been on the show before, and we'll talk about that a little bit too, but she is a licensed professional counselor, trauma therapist, and intuitive Reiki master. She has a master's degree in marriage and family therapy and has also worked with addiction and eating disorders. She's the author of Chakras and the Vagus Nerve, which we have a show on before, and The Vagus Nerve and Your Soul, which is her newest book. CJ believes clearing trauma from your nervous system is a pathway to the highest wisdom from your soul, and has worked with clients in her private practice struggling with various aspects of trauma by guiding people to attune to the messages from both their neurobiology and subtle body. Welcome back to the show, CJ. I'm so glad you're back.
Thank you, Barb. I know it feels like just yesterday we were talking
It does.
about.
I had a look. Do you know it was 2 years ago?
Yeah.
I was shocked. I was shocked. I thought that can't be. I kept looking. That can't be. But I'm so glad you've done a new book. As you started to tell me before we came on, and I stopped you, why you did the new book, you said you weren't finished. You want to tell me more about that?
It wasn't finished because, and I reference this in Chakras and the Vagus Nerve, my first book. This book, Chakras, the Vagus Nerve and Your Soul, is about the journey that our soul takes, but how it takes it in our body. And I am of the mindset, I truly believe, as the last 15 years, as I've worked with clients deeply to help them work through a lot of the trauma that that has been stored in their body and their nervous system, particularly the vagus nerve, for years. I've just seen this as a soulful process, because once you can clear the trauma that is stored in your nervous system, which also, by the way, stores in your organs, because your vagus nerve, the largest autonomic branch of your nervous system, it's the largest autonomic nerve in your system, connects to everything that is a major organ for us.
And it goes from brain all the way down, right? Do I have that right? Yeah.
What it does is it starts in the medulla oblongata, which is cranial nerve 10. It moves down through the throat, through the bilateral regions of the ears, the throat, down into the lungs. It is automatically, because autonomic is really automatic, automatically helping you breathe. It's what is keeping your heart pumping. It is what's helping you to digest. Even though we are sitting here just talking, we've got a lot going on behind the scenes right now in our body.
Right.
But one of the most beautiful aspects, which is founded in polyvagal theory. Polyvagal theory is Stephen Porges's work, which was a foundation for my work with my clients as a trauma therapist, is that the vagus nerve actually works like your wiring system. It attunes. It's constantly gauging the room. It's reading the room before your conscious brain is aware of it. Giving some structure for anybody that hasn't heard our first, 2 years ago, our first interview. There are 3 branches when you look at it through the lens of polyvagal theory. There are 3 branches that attune for us. We have the most ancient branch, which is dorsal. That's the one that shuts us down. Sometimes we faint, right? Sometimes we just can't get up. We can't move. We're feeling overwhelmed. Sometimes we dissociate. That's a lot of conversation that goes on when we work with trauma. The dissociation. That is a ancient branch that helps us just shut down enough to conserve energy in our body when things get overwhelming. Then we have the sympathetic branch, which is what helps to keep us activated and mobile. The sympathetic branch is we consider, a lot of people are getting to see it as the fight or flight branch, right? Because it is mobility when we are not feeling safe. But mobility and safety, I mean, how many times you go walking with your girlfriends, right? Or kids playing outside. Even I sit there and watch my cats and they'll fight and they're play fighting. They've got that mobility going, got that sympathetic. They're connecting, they're practicing. It's rough and tumble, but they're engaging in it. So we have an immobility branch, that's the dorsal. We have the mobility branch, which is the sympathetic. And then we have ventral vagal branch, which is what you and I are doing right now. We're connecting. We are listening. We're looking at each other, even though this is an audio podcast where we see each other. Barb and I are seeing each other through our cameras. And so we're connecting. We're looking at each other in the face. We're gauging each other's expressions. We are hearing each other's voices. Voice has a lot to do with safety. So the ventral vagal branch is what a lot of spiritual practitioners, they don't know it. That's what they're always going for. They're always going for the heart chakra. They're always going for the calming your nervous system, the breathing. Once our body feels safe, we can access, this is the spiritual part, that's when we access our higher, wiser self. I refer to it as soul. I use that sort of Hellenistic, term of soul, but anybody can call it whatever they want to call it. That higher, wiser knowing, that light within us. When our body is safe, we can really attune to it. But there's that very human tension, right? Our nervous system reading the room and our soulful self wanting these journeys. The soul is not afraid. The soul came here, right? It came, I found a lot of my, I've had a lot of exposure experience with Michael Newton's work. Michael Newton did a lot of life between life regressions, not just past life, but what we do between the lives. And he, as a body of work, and I have a very dear friend who was their research director over at the Newton Institute. So anyway, I'm sort of founded in this understanding based on his work that we choose these bodies. We choose these bodies. We choose this experience.
That's what I believe too.
Yeah. So this light, this is what I think we were talking more offline about this, but forget how we apply the theory, the religiosity of it. There's one thing we cannot argue. We have a light that comes into our body, and then at one point, without, through our lives, it will leave. That's it. That's an essence of us that comes in, and our body cannot function without that essence. And then someday it leaves. Period. The end. So forget anything else in between that. Don't get distracted with that. But then the real question is, this is a light that came from a source that is not afraid of being human. But we have a body that is programmed to keep us alive.
See, I think fear is wired in the body just to keep us alive.
It is supposed to be, absolutely. And it is wired through our brain and our nervous system. Our brain, I kind of call this the tension of the brain and the nervous system, because the brain is very important, obviously, to the nervous system. We have processing that goes up and we have processing that goes down, but they serve different memory components. And our culture our Western culture particularly, has always discussed that logic is more important, right? Since the 1700s, logic is more important than emotion. But if we are not attuned to what our body is sharing, we are not attuned to the higher, wiser messages within us, because our mind is the computer that's trying to map things out, put it in linear order, put it in chronological order. Our body, I think, is 3/4 of our messaging system, and we have this tendency to forget it. But I would also say, too, on the other side of that, I know a lot in the spiritual community, sometimes we cut the brain off and only want to go down here into our bodies.
Right.
So to have a full human experience is truly to have the tension and accept the tension between the spiritual self and the human self.
Mm-hmm.
And learning to navigate the human self by, first of all, knowing what your background is, how your nervous system got programmed through the years,
Yeah.
right? How you were born, what your messages were, what trauma is stored in your body. People try to push past that. They don't want to know this stuff. They don't want to feel that stuff. And then also being able to, through that work, being able to notice what's a neurobiological response versus what's actual emotion. And
Mm-hmm.
when I start working with my clients, I always tell them, because most times when someone comes to a therapist, they're feeling overall a lot of anxiety, or they're
Mm-hmm.
feeling depression because they're trying to push back all the other stuff, right?
Right.
So they've kind of shoved it all down. But when I tell them that anxiety is not an emotion, that freaks them out. It doesn't freak them out, but they are stunned. Because if we interpret that the anxiety that we feel in our body, which is awful, right? It
Right.
is the nervous
Right.
system activated, overactivated. It's the thoughts, and we can't control how many thoughts are activating the nervous system, etc. Then we're terrified to actually settle into our bodies and listen to the messages, because we interpret that anxiety is the emotion. So
Mm-hmm.
my work with them, to me, is very spiritual. It is to help them discern, help them to work through the anxiety, not as the symptom, but to know that beyond the anxiety lays a whole root of wonderful experiences. And that
So
there will, by the
anxiety is physical, it's not emotional. It's
anxiety, this is the thing that makes us complex.
mm-hmm.
Anxiety comes from too many thoughts at once, what I call future tripping, worried about the past. Sometimes
Yeah.
worried about the past brings us into that dorsal vagal depression,
Mm-hmm.
but and by the way, we all have it. And the
Mm-hmm.
Buddhists have known this forever. It's not about getting rid of anxiety. It's about understanding it's part of the human condition. And when
Okay.
you get
Yeah.
into the acceptance of that, right, it just that alone sometimes dissipates the anxiety. But knowing how we're thinking, right, that's
Mm-hmm.
very mindful, that's very Buddhist foundations. How are we thinking? The Buddhists understood the concept of the nervous system, but 2,000 years ago, we didn't have imaging. We didn't have some of the
Right.
medical components that we have now that actually show us what our nervous system is doing. They
Yeah.
understood, and here comes the discussion of the chakras. Those areas of our body, and chakras, by the way, are centers of our body, energy centers within our body. They're generally felt around what we call the nerve plexus, where the nerves end in our body.
Mm-hmm.
The Buddhists and the Hindus and the Buddhists knew this. At one point that was by the way, do you hear my sudden, do you hear the lawn people outside?
Not at all.
Okay.
Yeah.
I went a little
Right.
sympathetic on that. I'm like, oh, now I'm on this podcast and the
Yeah,
lawnmowers.
not at all. So you're good.
Okay,
I
good.
don't hear it.
You can keep that in. It's all part of the whole,
Yeah, yeah,
how our
yeah. We're
nervous system
real.
is
We're
arranging.
real. Yeah.
But the chakras are, I think, the extension of the messaging in our nervous system.
Mm-hmm.
And when we have trauma that has been stored in our body, that has been programmed to keep us safe,
Mm-hmm.
ultimately, right? We needed a coping mechanism back in the day, but unfortunately what trauma is it's an inability for our bodies to discern past and present,
Oh, wow.
right? Right? Because trauma is the thing we had in the past. We may have a signal, a smell, a sight,
Mm-hmm.
a person, right? We might run into a person, and our body has the same response that it did back during the moment of the traumatic event.
Right.
That traumatic event, if is stored in our system to basically say, oh, this is danger. If it happens again, it will be dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
So our system gets wired in ways that, just like you said, it helps to keep us safe.
Right.
But there are moments when we have too much wiring going on. That's when we have to discern, wow, this is a trauma response. It is not emotional. I feel myself shutting down, or I feel myself getting overactivated in a situation that doesn't require me to.
Hmm.
And that is coming from the nervous system. But somehow we end up vilifying our nervous system, right?
Right.
We end up vilifying, or we shame ourselves, like, why, what got into me? Why did I say that?
Hmm.
So being
Yeah.
able to understand that layer within our how our wiring works helps us to manage it,
Hmm.
so that we can act, there's nothing wrong. If we have to run, we're in danger. Somebody asked me once, well, how do you attune to the chakras? You don't.
Oh.
There are moments when we are just purely human and we got to get out of a situation,
Right.
and there's
That's
nothing
where the
spiritual
body
about it.
takes over. Yeah, the body takes over to jump out from in front of the car. If you
Right.
had to think about it, you're done.
If you're thinking, I can't get to my crown chakra, you're
Right.
dead.
Yeah,
Because the
yeah.
car just ran you over,
Not to
right?
worry anymore.
Right. Right. It's a spectrum, right? Then we are very human in that moment.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
exactly.
But
So
don't we all have trauma? Don't we
yeah,
all kind of
you
have
know,
trauma someplace or another?
we do. And the reason I say that, we can have this lovely, wonderful way that our parents were connected to us and kept us safe and
Mm.
gave us the space to explore and to allow us to be who we are.
Hmm.
And then then we have this awful teacher that started to tell us and made us question ourselves. Or we have, the bad bike accident.
Right.
We, you
What I
know,
call situational trauma. It
it,
happened.
and it is, yeah, like we call it single event, right?
Hmm.
And we would be lucky if all of us only had a couple of single event traumas in our lives.
Right.
But things get stored. And again, I do liken this to, because I do think that as humans, we build our world out as a reflection of ourselves without understanding it. And when you look at a car, this
Hmm.
helps even my friends who are very medical get out of the medical views of what the vagus nerve is and into that socio-spiritual neurobiological aspect of how our vagus reads the
Hmm.
room. um our we get into these electric cars and they're programmed to read how far ahead a car is in front of us, and it's programmed to slow us down. It's programmed to read how close to a curve we get. It's even programmed to read sometimes what the speed limit is, and it will slow our cars down.
No, that's
So
not happening so much with me.
but imagine, fine, everything works, it's slowing down, it's
Hmm.
reading the road the way it's supposed to. That's wonderful. So you go along in life and it's working just fine.
Right.
But all of a sudden, just imagine um, that the wiring is off. So
Right.
suddenly you cannot gauge how close you are to the curb, or it overcorrects
Hmm.
something, or it speeds up. I was in an electric car once, and while I was driving it, it was my friend's car. He was showing me the car. The adjustments in the car, I am very tall, the adjustments out of the blue adjusted to his wife's height and everything. And she's like 5'3" and
Oh,
I'm 6 feet.
yeah.
So
Oh,
it's that
no.
kind of thing where it's like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh. So
Yeah.
what happens is sometimes when we have information stored, it's old information that was registered to keep us safe in a
Hmm.
moment in time a long time ago. That nervous system sometimes cannot discern the past from the present. Trauma
Right.
steals time. It just steals time for us.
Hmm.
That's why, to me, the trauma work is very spiritual, right? Because when we can rewire our system, when we can get our neurobiology cleared,
Hmm.
then we can more easily access the wisdom within us.
Right. So, and how do you do that? There's a whole big thing going on right now about resetting the vagus nerve, and
Yes.
that's like some of them are talking about electrical stuff, which is, oh, don't touch me.
Well,
But I'm
and
not quite sure what that is.
I have there's all sorts of uh, gadgets that are coming out now. Some of the talks that I've heard Stephen Forges say, and I'm utilizing more of what he says than what I know actually.
Hmm.
But the studies are starting to show that the vagus, those vagal stimulating, those electrical things. Can you hear it? I'm getting, my nervous system is focusing, by the way, on the so-called danger of the mower outside, by the
Yeah,
way.
yeah, yeah.
Notice this is kind of cool, actually. I'm having a
And I'm
hard
not
time
hearing
focusing.
it at all.
Right.
I
And
wonder
I'm
if
having a
we'll
hard
hear
time
it on the,
focusing.
I wonder if we'll hear it on the tape later and I'm not hearing it, but I'm not hearing it at all. And
It's
it's in
it's a
your ear, huh?
it's a great it's a great description of what our nervous system is supposed to do,
Hmm.
right? All of a sudden you can see my body language. I'm kind of eyeballing the window that I'm sitting at,
Right.
and I'm worried that you can't hear me because, by the way, my nervous system, my vagus nerve, my middle ear, everything is shifting, and it is focused on the external environment right now
Hmm.
because it is trying to determine, are we safe?
Yeah.
Do we have to
Yeah.
go? What do we have to do? Do we have to run out there and tell them, stop, stop mowing the lawn?
Right.
So that, if there was no noise, my middle ear would have been shifting and focusing more on you, like
Hmm.
we were in the beginning.
Right.
So our vagal tone shifts. Back to your question about some of these gadgets. What I've actually heard Stephen Porges talk about is that studies are starting to show that it tricks the brain into believing that the system is safe. There are so many things that we can do for ourselves to bring us into um, just developing neuroplasticity, right? We want to develop that ability to go from, oh no, there's the mower, to what I'm already feeling, oh, mower's going away,
Yeah. I can
right?
relax. Yeah.
If I was still, oh no, that mower, I would be having a hard time bringing myself back into more of that safety connection with you,
Hmm.
more of that ability to get back down into the focus of our conversation.
Right.
So that vagal tone, right? It's kind of like when you stretch your muscles, you're doing it so that your muscles can respond better. Vagal tone has a lot to do with how you can go from one situation that's a
Mhm.
little tense back to present moment. How you can go from something that has felt overwhelming and shut you down a little bit, just slowly moving into that sympathetic range and mobility to eventually get to safety again. So
Yeah.
what those gadgets are supposed to do is stimulate you back into the moment of safety. But there's so much that you can do that can help you get back into that safety. But also, if
I
you're
have
not
to
safe,
ask a question here. There
yeah,
are some people, me included, that are fear based, what I call fear based. And we're really, I mean, we're safe. Logically, we know we're safe, but we're never safe. We're always on the lookout.
yep,
Fear based people that, don't trust life.
yep,
Where, how some people, they just trust life and everything just goes great, and then you've got fear based people that can't, um, every decision is really has an underlying decision based on fear somewhere,
yep.
fear based people. So is it your vagus nerve broken there?
No, nothing is broken. In fact, your vagus nerve is working very well. So
Hmm.
your vagus nerve is most likely responding to so-called programming. I'm trying
Right.
not to get too psychobabbly where I lose people, but that it goes to how we learn to attach, how we learn to be in relationships even in utero, very early on.
Hmm.
If we had tense parents, our connection to our parents through that nervous system, because our parents are the first ones to show us how to regulate with them.
Right.
And if they have a hard time regulating, if they were uptight or they had their own traumas, that's programmed into your nervous system. So it's
Yeah.
not a character flaw. It is not a character flaw. And I think that that's
It's
so,
exhausting, though.
it can be exhausting. And that is why maybe exploring, right, some early childhood stuff, that messages, things that might not feel, that didn't feel safe then, that are still not feeling safe in your body. So
Right.
that the decisions that you are making, that are everyday decisions, might feel fear-based. I had a friend who would say, we're good friends, so I know her background, and she said, there are just days I will be sitting there in my beautiful backyard reading a book. I'm so, lucky and blessed, and I look up and I'm feeling agitated. And of course, I break that down for her. That is because of the childhood trauma. That is
Yeah.
because something is registering beyond your brain's awareness that we're not safe. Maybe we don't know, it's not a cognitive knowledge process.
Right.
The brain picks up on the information after you've been able to process that. Now, processing, this is why this is so multi-tiered to be human.
Yeah.
Processing comes from working through any kind of neuro-experiential model. So having the experience of EMDR, brain spotting, those are my two neuro-experiential trained models.
And what
help
are
people.
they? Quick,
So EMDR uses
explanation.
eye movement desensitization reprocessing. So it uses eye movement to process out, zeroing in on a particular event, what we call a target. We process it out. So we gauge, ahead of time. Okay, Barb, when this happened, go back to the earliest event. Where did you register in your body? How does your body feel? Give me a number of 0 to 10 on stimulation, and then we would do the bilateral stimulation of the back and forth with your eyes to the point over time that your central nervous system, your vagus nerve, which is bilateral, it's got two sides, the same way your brain does, right? And the EMDR mimics REM sleep, because you know how we go to sleep at night, we wake up and we can suddenly something that we had on our mind is solved. That back and forth eye movement is helping us reprogram it. It's putting things back into a place. So that's eye movement desensitization reprocessing is one of them. Brain spotting is one of those techniques that came from eye movement, using certain spots in where the eyes might lock during a particular calling up a particular event kind of thing too, and holding that spot will naturally start to process out. Our nervous system also, our eyes and our nervous system and our brain will also, when put in that environment and it's constructive, and you have somebody who is trained in this, will help process, it will naturally start to process it out once we just hold the container, we give it the space.
Yeah.
We give it the safe space, and then we utilize this to help process it out. And over time, you do enough of that, you're just, you have space. You have space
It's like
in your
clearing
body.
the slate.
It really is. It absolutely is. And it gives you space. And it's like opening up a window in that first day of spring feeling in your body.
Right.
And that's when we can start. There's the absence of. I always say that to my clients. After processing a particular event or something, along the lines of childhood, there's the absence of that punchiness in the system, that activation or deactivation. Suddenly, your body has a sense of balance to it, because your nervous system has been cleared out. That memory, that programmed situation that is causing the car to go too close to the curb, or thinking there's a curb when there isn't, has now been readjusted. It has been realigned.
So there's a sense of trust, of relax.
Clear. There's a clearing. There's and everybody's a little different, right? But yes, there's an openness. There's a calmness. There's a knowingness, and the knowingness comes because you're not. What did you call yourself? A fear-based?
Yeah, fear-based.
the fear that is programmed in that did help you,
Mm-hmm.
probably, I'm guessing, early on in life,
Mm-hmm.
is no longer running the show.
Yeah.
And then your decision-making process comes from that higher, wiser you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I might have to get one of those machines.
Well, and so let's go back to ways that you can just develop some neuroplasticity for yourself. Just develop an ability, right? Like stretching that muscle that suddenly can do things it didn't before because it was stiff. Here's a breath work that I want to share with you. Because it's the simplest thing that we can do for ourselves. I'm actually gonna see if I can look something up while I'm doing this with you. I'm going through my phone. I won't get distracted and start playing on Instagram, I promise.
No reels.
When no reels, you won't hear
Yeah.
my reels. I won't send you any of my. When you are able to breathe in, and I'm talking because when we get into an anxious mode, we're not utilizing our full lungs.
Mm-hmm.
And again, what's helping us breathe? Our vagus nerve. That is the autonomic nervous system that's helping our lungs just automatically breathe. So when you are nervous,
Mm-hmm.
everything changes in your diaphragm. Everything changes in the way you breathe, right? Just
Right.
think about like a time that you're fearful. Are you taking deep breaths?
Usually I'm not breathing at all. It just stops.
Right. Oh, yowza,
Yeah.
right? Right. So you're
Like
not getting,
breathe.
right. And it's not, it feels counterintuitive, but it is not, because that is how we start reprogramming our system
Mm-hmm.
to get back into a place of space, right? Let's call it
Right.
space, but safety. So, just as you're sitting here, through your nose, because breathing through your nose acts as a filter,
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean, if you walk into a room and it's stinky, you're not breathing through your mouth. You naturally close your mouth and start breathing through your nose, right?
Mm-hmm.
So just take a deep breath in and see how far into your lungs you can pull it, right? And then slowly through your mouth. I call this flute breathing. Slowly through your mouth. Just exhale as slow as you can. Just do it slowly. Pull it in through your nose. Notice how deep into your lungs you can pull it. And then slowly breathe out. What are you noticing? Just keep doing it. And
Little
everybody that's
high.
listening,
A
a
little.
little, okay, slow, maybe because you're probably getting some oxygen you didn't have
Yeah,
before.
right. We're in the mile high.
And so slowly breathe that in again, just slow. Yeah. Notice, just be curious about how your body feels as you do it. And then slowly, like breathing out through a flute, breathe out.
Yeah, there's a relaxation throughout my body.
Yes. So especially on the exhale, what it's doing is it's slowing your heart rate down, right? It's sending information to portions of your brain. Portions of your brain, that medulla oblongata, as I was saying, that's where the vagus nerve starts running down into your body. It's sending a response that says, we're good, we're safe.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's also it's lowering your blood pressure, right? It's sending these receptors down into your blood that say, we can relax now. It's slowing your heart rate to a point where those beats between beats, right? That's what we want. It's called heart rate variability. You don't have to remember that term, but the beats between beats, it's like and all of a sudden you're feeling a little bit more grounded in your body, aren't you?
Yeah, feels much better. Much
Yep.
more relaxed.
Yep. And so it's a down regulation, right? We call it down regulation. We're regulating your body. We're bringing it down. And suddenly your body feels safe, doesn't it?
Feels a whole lot happier.
Right. Right. It's
More
hard to feel.
relaxed. Yeah.
It is, and it's hard. So it's hard to feel happy if you're not safe.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to feel any kind of joy, anything that goes under the heading of happiness, right?
Right.
It's to feel calm, you must feel safe. To do any kind of spiritual practice,
Mm-hmm.
you must feel safe in your body. So that develops right there, that real simple thing, what we call, what Porges refers to as vagal tone.
Mm-hmm.
It's, you just stretched your muscle, that tight muscle a little
Right.
bit.
And
It's
it does feel a
just,
whole lot better right now. But I don't know if I trust life. I don't know if we've made it that far. Yeah.
so that's like a whole other bunch of
Yeah, yeah.
podcasts.
That's a bigger conversation. Yeah.
And I would also say, because I think that we have this negative connotation to therapy, particularly trauma therapy, that helps people go and heal patterns in their early life
Mm-hmm.
that really programmed, right, that lack of safety in your body. But that is a very spiritual process,
Mm-hmm.
because when you are never feeling safe, it's hard to just sit and meditate.
Yeah, I don't meditate. I
Right.
read all the time. I actually meditate in a way through other people. So in reading, and doing a psychic read on somebody else, I am
Hmm.
meditating. That is my place where I go to spirit.
And what I would say to you too, here's a cool thing. There's a term called regulation, right? We're kind of talking about regulating how to feel calm within yourself. When you're alone, you're feeling not safe, pulling the breath in through the
Mhm.
nose, slowly exhaling it through the mouth, and just slow as you can go with it, right? Breathing in, sending the oxygen, slowing the heart rate, slowing the lungs, which of course then lowers blood pressure, right? But we can also regulate with other people, and that's called co-regulation. And that's exactly what you're talking about. When you do a reading for other people, there's this natural way that you are able to connect, right?
Mhm.
And we all do it. We all have, regardless of how intense our trauma has been, how unsafe we have felt through childhood, and we carry that tension in our bodies into adulthood. There's always those glimmers, there's always those moments of light where we can connect, feel
Yeah.
safe. And what you're referring to here, and this goes into the whole integration of spirituality with this. What you're referring to in this case is you connecting to another person, and that is a co-regulation. So they've connected to you, you've connected to them. Even online, we can still co-regulate, because you're looking at my eyes, I'm looking at
Mhm.
yours. We're connecting, and we're connecting through our voice, right, which is also gauged through the vagal nerves.
Mhm.
Um, and you are able to feel that connection and a little bit more safety. Sometimes we feel safety and we don't even know we're feeling it. It's
Yeah.
because when we have to start thinking about it, we're bringing other things in that are
Right, right.
probably creating anxiety for us,
Yeah,
right?
we're looking
Yeah.
for it usually. But how
Yeah.
about an empath? What is my definition of an empath is when their spirit goes out of body and merges with another person, or it merges with their aura, their energy field. That's what it looks like to me, that there's an actual merge that goes on. Like when I do a psychic read, I'm looking at them. I'm not merging
Hmm.
with them, but
Hmm.
empath will go out of body and merge with another person. And that's where they're gathering their information. They almost become the other person and then can know everything about that person. And then they'll come back into their own space, usually bringing a little bit of the other person with them, unfortunately, because that's where it gets a little messy.
Yeah. And so, kind of framing this conversation, I don't usually put this out here, but I've spent years studying mediumship in
Hmm.
spirituals communities.
Right.
So I have a framework for this when I say this,
Hmm.
that there are times when we are in childhood that we have such a trauma
Right.
that it actually kind of blows out our own personal space, right? It's blowing out our nervous system, right? And when I say blowing out, it's creating such a level of lack of safety in our nervous system that it's hard to get any kind of grounding, any kind of sense of self, that it can be that bad.
I call it
And
frying the circuits. You fried the circuits.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's taking away, and what it can look in so many different ways. But when that happens, a lot of times, and you hear people say, people who've had early childhood trauma are very good psychics.
I've heard that there is there has to be a trauma in childhood for there to be a psychic, for the
Now, there
psychic to
doesn't
be
have to
born.
be.
Yeah.
I would argue that it doesn't have to be,
Mm-hmm.
but it becomes that way, I think, because that's really the only attunement that they're able to have, because they have not been given the opportunity to discern this and to work their own energies and to understand what's going on in their own bodies, the messaging in their bodies from the nervous system. I want to
I
back
thought
up.
they also maybe fractured the separation, the boundaries were fractured.
Well, and that's what I
As
say.
they popped out of body, kind of.
That is dissociation. There are times I work a lot with people, particularly women with early childhood sexual abuse. And when I'm first working with them, we go nuts and bolt, and we go down to just discerning how they disconnect. And it's tough because they learn to get out of their body during awful things that happened to them when they were children, and they could not fight, they could not run, so they had to freeze. So their nervous system shut them down, and they, there's different ways that people have done that through the years. People dissociate differently. By the way, there's a spectrum of dissociation. So you can have that out of body, you can have that missing time. And, we all kind of dissociate when we're tired, and all of a sudden we find ourselves driving home and we're like, oh, shoot, I don't remember going. I just,
How'd I get here? Yeah.
There's lots of spectrum of dissociation, but when you get into that early childhood trauma, that's what's happened to your nervous system. So there's a piece that I haven't brought into this conversation yet that goes with the chakras. So how I have been seen working with clients who are reclaiming themselves, reclaiming their bodies, reclaiming their messaging. You're working on the deeper, older, layers of self to healing them. What I have seen through the processing is I've seen the messaging coming through what we call, I just refer to as the 7 main chakras, right? Where I'm seeing the messages. Perhaps they are trauma messages that are coming through the root chakra or the sacral chakra. I break this down in the first book, and I reference this definitely in the second book as well. So there's messages that seem to present, this isn't a textbook script, right? But I'm noticing that there's messages that present. But I also notice that when we heal a trauma, we heal an event, we heal an overall experience, that the message that's coming through what we call the chakras is a healing of the nervous system. This is, to me, where the chakras are simply they're not a separate system than our vagus nerve. They're not a separate system than our nervous system. They are simply representing the information on the outside of us that we cannot see, that I refer to as etheric energy. So it's all one. It's just that, I suppose it takes someone who, it takes this information for us to really get to understand that. So when someone says, well, I want to heal this chakra, the chakra's closed, my heart chakra's closed, and it could very well be because you've had lots of betrayal as a child. It really is an indicator of a lack of safety in your nervous system. How it's programmed in your nervous system, it's just representing outward.
Right.
So
The
as
trauma
an
that I had, because I kind of want to put this out there, is it was a family illness of another child. And I was young. I was like 6 years old. And that's when I learned, oh, you are not safe in life.
yeah,
Your parents cannot protect you.
yeah,
You know, nobody can protect you. Life can get you. Yeah.
yeah.
So, you know, that's one I got stuck on, and I haven't trusted life since. You know?
Well, and just think of it that way, because we know as adults that that is the case, right?
Right, right.
That there are things we put in place for ourselves to keep ourselves safe,
Hmm.
including connecting with safety through others, etc. We know that life is impermanent as adults.
Right,
We don't
right.
know that at 6. So what you are saying is that 6-year-old self in there.
Yeah.
That 6-year-old self is still running your adult self.
Hmm.
And my hands are going from like one side to the other,
It
dropping
did.
back like a timeline. No one can see
This will
this right
be
now.
this will be on YouTube too, so they'll see it there if they need
Oh,
to.
great. They're going to
Yeah.
see me in my wet hair that I got stuck in
Yeah.
I got stuck in the rain before I came in here.
You look
So I have
fine.
wet hair. It's all right. It's all right. But that is 6-year-old
Hmm.
experience in your nervous system. That reveals itself through your energy.
Yeah,
One of the
I can
times
see it now, the lack of trust of life. Yeah.
but it's not a permanent state. I want to kind of really affirm that it's not a permanent state, but the way to truly help your nervous system find some what I was saying, that attunement and neuroplasticity in a way that feels present, right, is to work that out through the trauma processing.
Hmm.
You can't. I am an energy worker. I see energy. I love energy. I'm a Reiki master. I do all the things. Nothing takes the place of going back and working through the trauma that clears this out of your nervous system, going back to those times,
Right.
helping your brain and your nervous system reintegrate that message
Hmm.
so that your energy clears. Your energy aligns because your nervous system, the programming, the data sets, I call it sometimes the data sets. I try to pull in images for people that can that are clinical so they can
Hmm.
see it. Your data set said, oh my gosh, no one's safe. That's a very scary place to be as a
Right.
6-year-old. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's you learn too early, is what I took it as. You learn too early before you can really
Precisely.
process it.
Absolutely. And then what happens is you become, I'm imagining, a little overactivated. You're getting
Hmm.
hypervigilant around things.
Right.
But that's your 6-year-old nervous system. That's your
Right.
6-year-old self. Yeah.
You know,
And
you
go,
don't have a plan A and a plan B. You've got a plan F, a plan G,
right,
you know,
right,
just to
right.
cover. Yeah. Yeah.
And so imagine going back
Hmm.
through EMDR, brain spotting, with a trauma therapist, with a trained trauma therapist, because we have all
Right.
sorts of other knowledge pieces like attachment theory and all this other stuff
Hmm.
that we apply to this. We kind of come in with all this beneath us or behind us to be able to work with you on that, to heal that within your nervous system. And that person today who's you've been doing life, right? You know
Right.
life now. You're a grown up now.
Hmm.
Won't have a plan X, Y, and Z as
Yeah.
well as
Yeah.
an A, B, and C. You will know. You will have that open, fresh spring air coming
Hmm.
through, that window
Right.
of yours.
Right.
Yeah.
And now, would that also be stuck in a chakra?
I feel that I don't like using words like stuck because I think it
Hmm.
represents through the chakras.
Right.
Right? It presents through the chakras. So it's the information is programmed deep in your nervous system. How your brain pulled that in, how those messages got sent down to your body where it wasn't feeling safe. And
Hmm.
loved ones weren't safe. Literal loved ones were not safe. You were watching siblings with big illnesses.
Hmm.
Parents feeling vulnerable, right? You just pull all that in, which
Right.
is normal. It's totally normal. If you weren't, I'd be saying, well, you weren't really present during that
Yeah.
time,
Right.
were you?
And that's what I call situational traumas. Nobody did
Yes.
it. It
Nobody
just
did it.
happened. Yeah.
You know, stuff happens in our
Right.
lives.
Life
Yes,
happened.
absolutely.
Yeah.
But when what I teach therapists when I help them attune through that, what we call somatic, listening to the body, listening to how messages are showing up in the body, because sometimes they're not necessarily showing up chronologically. They might be showing up through images, symbols, just a knowing. That's how our messaging system below our neck works, right? Our chronology is up in our brain. But being able to help the nervous system clear that, reset it, right? Defrag it. That's something I learned. I don't know if that's still an old computer term. When you defrag a computer, you put all the files naturally kind of go back to where they were to begin with. In some ways, it's working through your trauma neurobiologically is defragging. And then how the messages represent in your body, the feeling, the symbolism, just the expression, because everybody's a little different. Some people are more knowing, clairaudient might even be, you know, even clairnascent, by the way, you know. It's people are going to feel differently within those areas of their body because there's been a shift, there's been a permanent shift and a change. So again, love me some energy work. But energy work doesn't clear the trauma. Energy work is like a lovely massage. It starts putting safety into the system if you've got a good energy worker, but it is not the way to clear trauma. And so I think on some level too, kind of walking both sides of the fence on this, right? Being the trauma therapist, but also being the intuitive and having the training as a medium and having, you know, the energy understanding and experiences. I take issue of how we say some of the things we say in the metaphysical world, right? Oh, it's stuck in there. It has a shaming. We sometimes we have to watch how we use our language. This is blocked. This, you know,
the energy
chakra is blocked.
Yeah.
Right. It's the energy is maybe holding on in your sacral chakra because your early childhood experiences we're not safe, we're holding on. This is sort of the lower chakras represent those areas of our body with the vagus nerve that help us digest food, help us with resting and mobility and motility, moving things through the body. So, you know, to say your sacral chakra is blocked, your sacral chakra, that area of your body and all the digestive organs might be holding on to some memories. Right. So
and that's the second chakra.
Well, so in my first book, we talk about the root chakra. I don't use Sanskrit because I'm throwing enough at you. But the root chakra really represents, think where it's aligning. It's aligning, all those nerve plexes are aligning with the reproductive organs, right? I'm trying to pull all the science from my head. You know, ways that we move things through our body and expel them from our body, right? It's very, very primal. It's very much about recreating and expelling and just being connected to the earth as humans. It's a very human experience. Then we get, and which is body. Then we get up into that sacral chakra. What I see working through that a lot, again, it's not set in stone because everybody's different. The sacral chakra has a lot to do with how we learned as children to connect. How you learned had nothing to do with bad parenting. It had to do with family situational stuff. But you learned, well, I'm not safe. No one's safe. We're not safe, right? So there's a lot of messaging that we hold into the sacral chakra. That connects. Ooh, that one starts getting up into the upper digestive system, right? When you're not feeling safe, your tummy goes a little awry, right?
Oh, yeah. Oh, she's feeling.
But that's my point, and that's not emotion.
Right.
Right? That's not emotion. And that's what I work with when I work with clients. That's how I work. That's not emotion. That is memory, that is affect, that can be anxious. You know, it's trauma, it's being held in there. And your body's saying, oh no. We're remembering this, and we're going to keep you safe again. Because again, so much of our body, trauma-wise, cannot discern past from present. But then we get up into the solar plexus, and then we get up into that identity of mind, not in our brain mind. Who are we in the outside world? We have multiple identities. I'm an IFS therapist, but I'm not bringing that into the conversation because it's even more to think about. But we have multiple identities in the world, right? Who you are now, right? You know,
Right.
Barb Crowley now,
You're
having the
inside
podcast.
person, you're outside
You're
person.
inside right? You know, when you're with your
Yeah.
brothers, you're probably different, and you just we have multiple identities,
Yeah.
and we start developing those very early on. And then we get up into the safety branches of our vagus nerve. We get up into the heart chakra. That's why everybody loves the heart chakra, right? We're going to breathe, we're going to calm, we're going to get into the heart chakra. What you're getting into is, you know, when I was showing you that breathing technique, you're getting into ventral vagal safety, which also is where the energy is in the heart chakra. And then going up into the throat chakra, right? We have bilateral branches of the vagus nerve at that point, as it's coming down from the brain and going into the lungs and connecting to the heart before the other branches are also connected down into your digestive system. Throat chakra, when you're not safe, is it hard to speak? Or do you I overtalk when I'm nervous or I don't feel safe.
Yeah.
Like my throat
I
chakra
start
goes.
repeating a lot. Yeah.
Right,
I'll
right.
repeat the same sentence in shock, I think. It's almost like a shock. I'll say, yeah,
Yes.
did you just get here? And then I'll say again, did you just get here? It's like,
And that's produced from the trauma that's stored in your
right.
body, and you're repeating because who knows where that came from. Absolutely. So and people talk about clearing the throat chakra, but if we don't feel safe in our bodies, I've worked with people, some people deeply for years, who still are just technically their throat chakra is starting to open. But that's because they're starting to feel safe, they're starting to feel heard in ways that they didn't as children. So this messaging goes up and down in here. When we get into the third eye and the crown chakra, we start getting into the brain, which has a whole other, the vagus connects to nerves up in the cranial, you know, like the ocular nerves and the cranial nerves. That's a whole other system, but it also connects very much down into the spine. So the messaging centers that we hear through these 7 chakras, by the way, reflects out to the auras, but I don't put that in the book because how much more can I put in there, right?
Book 3.
Right. Actually, I will say this. I do start talking about more of that in book 2. Because I talk about how the energy really expresses outward. Now, what I will say, the component that I just kind of been dancing around because we've gotten into trauma conversation. If you think about it, what happens to our bodies when this energy leaves? This higher, wiser energy, and wherever it goes, that's not part of the conversation right now, but wherever it goes, what happens to our nervous system? What happens to our chakras?
I don't know.
Right?
Yeah.
Our nervous system loses the intelligence that it had. Those energy centers are not there anymore. So what is fueling the nervous system? What's fueling the brain?
Oh, yeah.
And that's my point, is that here we come down into, using the metaphor of the car again, this light that comes through to us. I'm kind of gesturing like through the crown chakra, because there's been some studies in the Newton Institute that some people have memories of entering the body through the crown chakra. But we come in to this body, and then we start adjusting to this thing we're sitting in, like a car. Oh my gosh, what is this? Okay, is this car going to work? Whoa, we're good. Oh, this is a great car. Oh my gosh, this isn't so great of a car. We gotta work through this, right? We find our vehicle through our body, and we start that light within us that is a universal light force. And there's no way to really research this. We just have to, but it is common sense. That universal light force is what generates and creates intelligence within our nervous system.
Right.
And it creates this component of energy that reaches outward through the nervous system. So the chakras, the vagus nerve expresses outward and is the chakras. And then our soul light is the auras as well that are around us. So yeah, I am not going to have anybody's soul attaching to me because I want my boundary in place. We should not have somebody else's essence coming out of their body and attaching to us. Talk about bad boundaries. That goes beyond bad psychological boundaries.
Yeah.
That's bad metaphysical boundaries, you know?
But that gathering of energy that an empath will do, you know, where they can feel, they'll come meet a person and know everything about them and nobody said a word and they've never met them before.
Yeah, and I think there's so many abilities in that regard. And I also hear people, you know, and I can sometimes, if I'm tired, not in a good place, I'm exhausted, I can sit next to somebody and all of a sudden I'm having thoughts. I'm like, those aren't my thoughts.
Right.
But that means my nervous system, my energy is not, it's too diffused.
Right.
It's too diffused. I can't tell my car headlights from another person's car lights. So that's to me when we have to go back and center. Because
get our boundaries back out.
Absolutely. Because psychic boundaries are the equivalent of physical boundaries and psychological boundaries. They have to be put in place. And if people struggle more than others, being able to really refine how they aren't always so open. And believe me, I've been there too, you know, and it's like, it's not good. It's not good for us because we don't know where we end and another being begins.
Or as you said, those aren't my thoughts. You at least knew that. There are a lot of people who don't know that.
And that's the work, right? That's the work. Sometimes it's trauma work. Sometimes it's just the knowing, whoa, that wasn't mine. I'm not owning it. Right. Sometimes it's a feeling. Those are the awful ones, right? That's where we as humans, as this light being in this human body, we have to apply the work. That's not necessarily a gift. That can be a violation of somebody else, or it's too much diffusion within us.
Yeah.
Because if we don't enter, if I call you and say, Barb, I want a reading, I am entering into that spiritual agreement with you. I'm allowing you to read me.
Yeah.
If we start looking and no one's asking, whether we pick it up or not, we're violating someone's boundaries.
I think the spirit will shut it down if it doesn't want to be seen. So it's not, all one-sided. You don't have that kind of power to say
and if we're
what the spirit doesn't want.
If we're good at saying, I'm going outside, I'm going to wrap my energy around me, I'm not going to stay open, then we're cool. And that takes work. That takes work.
It takes training. It really takes. Yeah. Or what I say is you're breaking a bad habit and establishing a new habit.
Right.
Habit. But it does take that kind of exercising.
And it goes from the inside out.
Yeah.
It's not one or the other. It's not one system versus another system. It is absolutely inside out. Yeah. Okay. Hope that made sense.
Yeah. No, the chakras, the energy in the chakras in your energy field, you call that also soul. So those are the same.
Well, if you think about the question, what fuels the vagus nerve? What fuels any of us?
Right.
We don't know, but we do. We don't know, but we do. Right. When our energy leaves our body, when we die, what we call die.
When the body dies.
There's no intelligence within that system. We might be able to, pluck at a couple of nerve systems and move an arm or something, but there's no intelligence. There's no longer intelligence within our system.
Nobody's home.
No one's home. Yeah. There are no chakras.
Yeah.
And so it's, to me, especially because as I see this through trauma work, especially because it's just such deep work, I'm seeing from the inside out the meaning that has been made through a particular experience beyond our nervous system's meaning, right? That's what's expressing deep inside of us, wherever we're hanging out in there, affecting the intelligence of our nervous system, affecting actually because our I talk a lot about the health and the connection of the vagus nerve within our body and some of the what we call the medical issues that go wrong with it.
Right.
But we are expressing that through this nervous system, through these organs. These organs are holding on to memories too, because the organs are connected to the nervous system and the brain and the whole, up processing, down processing. And then that energy is expressed outward.
So let's say if something in your soul can actually impact your vagus or comes in and sets your vagus to what you're going to experience this time around, but also if you can clear the vagus or clear the trauma from your physical body where it's kind of gotten in there, that also changes the soul.
Right, because the soul's here.
Yeah.
We're all different, but we're all here for an experience.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody's experience, while it has a collective, I don't know, intention, I guess,
Right.
everybody's experience is different. So we came in to have, to experiment with, I don't know, being a millionaire. Or we came in to experiment with being poor. We came in to experiment with art.
Everything's an experience, yeah.
Everything is an experience, and that our soul has chosen. And it's kind of funny because it almost seems, sometimes it's almost really a simple experience. But it could be wanting to hike feel the earth,
Yeah.
So we all come in for that experience. And then that's work too, sometimes listening to what am I here for? That's the eternal question.
That's the big question. And usually you don't know until you're out of here in between life. Yeah.
Because sometimes our nervous system gets in the way of that question.
Right.
It's sometimes just the shit that happens in the world that programs in to keep us safe blocks that information. It comes through, but that's the dance. That's the dance between being human and being soul.
Right.
It's that my hands are going back and forth. Yeah.
Yeah. So the clearing has to go through the vagus nerve. It can't go from the energy in. It really, because we are physical, it has to go from physical out.
The meaning is made through the brain. The information is stored through the vagus nerve. This is based on a lot of polyvagal theory. But, we think of, when you look at EMDR, the REM sleep, this is part of what we do naturally. And somehow we end up solving our problems when we go to sleep. And wake up.
Yeah.
So it is
what the body does now.
Right.
Yeah.
The body is, and especially the neck down. The mind only holds on to a certain amount of information that it's given. I think it's like 30% in one day. So the body holds on to everything.
All memory. And all memory from the past, do you think? From past lives?
Yes, because you know what? I think that would probably depend on the person, but that's certainly within the equation. Again, very much life between lives work. I think that's very helpful for us to know what was our past life and why did we choose this life again.
Right.
But we can get bypassy with that. We can bypass the work here now if we get too caught up in, I was Queen Elizabeth in a past life or something. We get caught up in that versus, so if you were Queen Elizabeth, why'd you come back?
Right. I know. If it was so good, what are you doing here? Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And I have seen people get caught, but mostly it's because they want to get out of this. They want to leave their present time. It's like, oh, let me go look at that because I'm not liking my life.
And that's what spiritual bypassing is. But you're not really then working on why you came here.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're not giving the soul a chance to kind of figure things out.
Yeah. So you work with people directly on Zoom and.
Yes, right now I still have a caseload, and I'm writing and I'm doing all the things. Yeah.
Right.
But I'm not taking the clients right now. I'm not doing anything, that way. But yeah, and the information that I try to get out right now is to hopefully do it through the books,
Right.
And getting a little bit better and staying on my social media, and that will start shifting too. I am going to start putting some classes online now that I'm done with this book deadline, and I just moved, getting some personal stuff kind of situated.
Yeah.
I'm going to start putting some classes online. So on my website here shortly. So stay
And let me
tuned to the
have your
website.
website. Yeah, tell everybody where they
It's
can get hold of you.
it's CJ Llewelyn. Now, Llewellyn is 2 L's up front and one in the middle.
Hmm.
I have 3 L's. My publisher has 4.
Yeah,
So it's
yeah.
CJLLEWELYN.com.
Hmm.
And yep. And I'm on Instagram. CJ Llewelyn is on Instagram, and a little bit still on Facebook, and mostly that, playing around with some of the new social media as well. So,
Hmm. Are they able to email you, or do you want it through the
yes,
website? Yeah,
they haven't. It's easier just to do it through the website.
it is.
I
Yeah.
check my website email all the time. It's CJ@CJLlewelyn.com. Way easier just to do it that way.
Okay.
Um, yeah, I check it all the time.
Great. And is
Um,
your book out now?
my book came out April 8th.
Oh, good.
And it
Congratulations.
was, thank you. I think that at least on Amazon it sold out because they had to
Oh my
restock
God,
it.
that's great.
I was
Yeah.
like, woohoo. So
Yeah.
we'll see about that.
Hmm.
Yeah. And I'm
Congratulations.
speaking,
Yeah.
thank you. I'm speaking at the Association for Comprehensive Energy Psychology this spring in May. If
Hmm.
anybody's interested
Where is
in
that?
that, will be in Phoenix at the
Hmm.
Wigwam in Phoenix, Arizona. They can look at, I think it's ASEP.com or energypsychology.com.
Hmm.
So it brings together a lot of therapists who
Yeah.
work heavily with somatic work. We have a lot of energy workers or tapping. There's just a lot of people with different
Right.
modalities.
Do you
Kind of
find
brings them together.
that the science now is starting to catch up
Yeah.
to both um, the energy and the physical? So
Yeah.
the vagus nerve reset, which a lot of people are talking about now,
Yeah.
is both.
And it's reset is getting back into safety.
Hmm.
If it takes a blanket or the breathing, yes, the reset
Right.
is getting back into safety and being able to be, reading the room in ways that are appropriate. That if there's danger in the room and you don't think there is, respond appropriately. If there isn't danger, to be able to get back into safety. Yes.
Yeah.
I think that it can't be one camp or the other. It cannot be. We're not
Hmm.
made that way. I mean, the way
Right.
I see it, the way I'm writing about it, we're not made that way.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. It's a blend. Body can't move without the spirit. The spirit, though, might be moving without the body.
The spirit wants
Yeah.
to go. The body's like,
Yeah.
I don't know. We've been here before. We can't do this again. Because
Yeah.
remember, we fell last time. So
Really.
therein lies being human is hard sometimes, right? And the
Yeah.
spiritual is the psychological.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, thanks so much for being on the show. I've loved it as usual. I'm so glad you're
It was
back.
great, Barb.
Yeah, and
Thank
I love
you.
your new book. I'm so glad you've come out, and I'm thinking there's going to be a book 3 as well.
Yeah,
Because we went
I'm
into
not done
places
yet.
you're like, oh, I can't. That's getting too big.
Not done
Yeah,
yet.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Good, good. Thanks so much for being on.
Thanks, Barb. You have a good one.
Thank you. You too. Bye bye.
Bye.